Yeah, obviously we're a 3-5 team, and he's a 3-5 quarterback right now. There's a lot of things that he's got to get better at. There's a lot of things that we got to get better at.
Phil Emery talking after the Bears lose to the Patriots 51-23. That's the final in Foxborough. The Bears drop it big time. Just a really all-around depressing performance from the Bears. And I'm here. I'm Ethan Cowgill. I'm your host. And I'm here with Andrew McCulloch.
Hello, Bears fans.
How's it going, Andrew?
I'm fine, man.
And
tough loss on Sunday, though.
Yeah, we'll get into that. You guys are listening to the Bearscast. We're broadcasting live from North Campus here in the basement. We're going to be talking to you for the next 30 minutes about Bears football, how they did last week, and the road ahead. And looking towards this past week, against the Patriots, Week 8 matchup. Bears go on the road where they've generally done better than they have before. They've done better on the road than they have at home. But, you're playing New England, who's extremely tough at home. And the Bears, they struggled.
Agreed. Did you? I could say that this was basically expected. Would you say so? I mean, maybe not drastically the score that we found, 51-23, but not a lot of people expected the Bears to put up a big fight, maybe a fight. People thought maybe it'd be a 7 to 10 point game, but I certainly didn't see us losing by 28. Tough loss. Everybody really just dropped the ball, and it comes down to, again, being prepared like they weren't against Miami. I don't think they were very prepared. Trestman doesn't have these boys prepared and ready to win games.
I agree. That's the thing. They just did not look. They seem like their philosophy every week has been changing. They don't know what they want to do. Like on the 3rd and 1 on the first play, on the first drive of the game, the Bears elect to pass. They don't go for the run. They get away from the run game. Sometimes they commit to it. It's just very bizarre. Let's kind of go over the whole narrative of the game here. I mean, this game was dominated early and often by the Patriots. I mean, on the opening drive, Tom Brady connects with Gronkowski for a touchdown, and that's second most quarterback to tight end touchdown passes all time, second to only Phillip Rivers and Antonio Gates at 69, and they would later go on to break that or surpass that again. But Pats score first, then they get another field goal, then they score another touchdown. They scored 17 unanswered points to start the game. Then the Bears, it looked like the Bears, had some life in them, like they were going to compete. Jay Cutler connects with Forte on a nice 25-yard touchdown score. And again, Forte is excelling in the receiving game. But after that, it was just in the second quarter, the whole team just collapsed. Untimely turnovers and fumbles. There was a span in like under a minute where the Patriots scored 3 touchdowns. And by the end of the half, the game was pretty much over. At halftime, the score was 38-7. So really, there's not a whole lot you can do after that. And of course, the Bears would add in some garbage time touchdowns in the fourth quarter. But as we said earlier, 51-23 Pats. Did you have any thoughts about how the Bears performed in that first half?
You summed it up exactly right. Patriots. Well, the Bears got the ball first, and they went 3 and out, just like they have for the last I don't know how many games. They seem to never be able to set the tone of the game right off the bat. They go 3 and out, they punt it away, and they let the other team score a touchdown on them, and they get in the hole right away, which forces the Bears to have to stray away from the running game, which they should be going to right off the bat, because Matt Forte is averaging over 4 yards per carry this year, and he is our best player on offense this year without a doubt. So when the Bears don't get a drive going and at least put pressure on the defense, and they send their defense out right away after a 3 and out, it puts a lot of pressure on our defense, which isn't healthy, and it's not very good. And it allows the other team to set the tempo on offense and put us in a hole that we could not obviously get out of. There was no chance.
Even when the defense is healthy, they're still not very good.
That's right.
They're missing Bostic and Briggs and a couple other players, but still, it's an older defense, and there's going to be an adjustment period. One thing I wanted to mention was Lamar Houston. What a joke. I mean, this guy, he sacks the backup quarterback, and then while they're down 51-23, he celebrates that sack. But of course, that's not where the comedy ends. He tears his ACL while celebrating, and now he's going to be out for the rest of the year.
Can I call this karma? Because over Twitter, he posted some very questionable tweets questioning Bears fans' loyalty towards the team. Well, buddy, we're pretty loyal to the team, but it doesn't sound like you're passionate enough to win the games if you're going to celebrate a sack to a backup quarterback down by 28 points in a game that you've lost for a duration of 30 minutes in the game, because this game was over at halftime. There's no reason to celebrate being down by 28. That was the first sack recorded in the entire game for the Bears. Lamar Houston has maybe how many sacks this year? Maybe 2 at most.
Yeah,
he has done absolutely nothing for our team. He has contributed nothing towards the pass rush. Sure, he's good with the rushing defense, but this guy, he runs his mouth way too much, doesn't produce on the field. And you know what? Good riddance to you, buddy. I'm sorry. I hate to say that because you never root for people to get injured, but maybe this is a wake-up call for the Bears. This game has to be some kind of a wake-up call. That, or they're just going to continue to struggle and have no leadership in the locker room, which I could very well see.
That's so evident this year with the Bears. Is there is no leadership anywhere. Last week they had a big scuffle in the locker room. There's a lot of division in the locker room. This week, it's kind of the same story with Brandon Marshall. He's been very vocal about his disappointment with the Bears' record as of late, and I don't know who is the figurehead in that locker room that can rally the troops, so to speak, because I don't see it from Jay Cutler. I don't see it from Forte. I don't see it from the coaching staff. You listen to Mark Trestman on these post-game press conferences, and he always deflects blame. He will never go after Jay Cutler in these press conferences. It's always, we had some protection issues. Somebody ran, the incorrect route. But it's never, Jay Cutler made a poor decision or tried to do too much, which is kind of what Emery echoed in his conference.
Yeah, and the Bears will go to hell and back to defend Jay Cutler, which is inexcusable to me. With Jay, the 2 turnovers that he had, the fumble and the interception, you could say maybe the offensive line struggled. They obviously struggled. The Patriots were getting to Cutler with ease, but on a fumble like that with Cutler, just secure the ball and fall. There's no reason to try and get the ball out of your hands and try and throw your arm forward to get the ball out. Just go down, take the sack. And again, with his interception throwing, it's because he tries to fit the ball. I feel like every time he throws an interception, it's because he's trying to fit the ball in a tight corner or a tight pocket to Brandon Marshall.
Yeah.
It's always Brandon Marshall.
Absolutely. Yeah. I see. There's a lot of errant throws, a lot of deep throws that, they try to force yardage at times. They want to get really big chunks instead of, let's use some, and they do use the screen game, but sometimes they abandon the run and they don't attack and they don't go for first downs enough. They're trying to get that big play, and that hurts them a lot of the time. And it stalls drives as well. Jay Cutler, his game, I think the big problem, you look at his stats for the game, 20 for 30, 227 yards. He did have 3 touchdowns, but, again, a lot of those 2 of those touchdowns came at the end of the game with, secondary defensive units in there, and the game was over at that point. So it didn't look like he had a terrible game, but he didn't produce. He didn't help the team win. He didn't play well when they needed him to. Then Forte, who's been, as you said, Andrew, the best player on this team offensively, over the century mark with rushing yards. He had, in addition to those rushing yards, over 50 yards receiving and a touchdown. He had a great game. I think that he's being used to his fullest extent. What did you see out of this game?
I want to add on to that a bit about Forte. An interesting statistic when the Bears lose, Matt Forte averages 133 yards per game all around. When the Bears win, he averages 86 yards per game. It's ironic because when Matt Forte gives us our big production, usually the Bears are a lock to win football games, and we are seeing just the opposite of that.
Yeah.
But I want to backtrack to a good point you made about leadership. And you were exactly right when you said we don't know who the Bears' leader is, and I don't even think the Bears know who their leader is. They have no leader.
Yeah.
Brandon Marshall talking to the press and saying it's unacceptable 7 times in a row, or however many times he said it. And then the media, I don't know if you knew this, but on a 4th and 10 play when the Bears went for it, or actually it was after a 3rd and 10 play, Marshall called for a receiver to come off the field. He called a receiver to come in for him, and he went off the field. And it was a 4th and 10 situation, and the Bears would end up, I believe I don't think they converted. They might have, they might not have, I don't remember. But the media was questioning Brandon's will to be on the field through trying times.
Yeah.
And he got very upset about that. So it's just kind of weird that last week he was like, I'm a leader. This is unacceptable. We have to perform better. We have to have more passion for the game. And then here he is leaving the field on a very important situation. It just goes to show that the Bears really have no player in the locker room that they can look at as a leader.
Yeah, I think that Brandon Marshall, I don't think he's a leader. I think he's a great player, but I don't think he inspires other people. I think a lot of people look at him and they like to have him on their team, but I think he still has those attitude problems that rear its ugly head every once in a while. When it goes bad, it goes bad. When they win, it's not nearly as evident, but I don't think that he's the player that kind of rallies the team around him and lifts them to new heights. So that I think that's going to be something that the Bears are going to have to figure out. And I think that leadership role has existed or has been absent ever since Brian Urlacher left the team. Ever since he was injured and he retired, I don't think we've found that replacement for Brian Urlacher.
You're right, and I think most of us thought it would be either Peanut Tillman or Lance Briggs, but these guys can't stay healthy and on the field, and if you can't be on the field, you can't really be a leader from the sideline, I don't think. I don't think that's really a quality players look at. If you're injured and on the sideline, they're not going to really take what you have to say into much consideration because you're not on the field and you're not going through what they're going through. But to get back to the offense, Matt Forte is obviously our best player on offense. There's no doubt about that. And you're absolutely right when you say the Bears have absolutely no identity because there are times when we will run the football and then there's times where we have to stray away from running the football, like this last game because we fell so far back early. But even on our first drive of the game, like you said, we came out 3rd and 1 and we passed the ball. Don't run it. Matt Forte is very capable of getting those 3rd and 1 conversions.
Yeah.
And it's just it's inexcusable, and that just comes down to play calling with Tressman and the boys. But the man that has really infuriated me the last couple of weeks is our defensive coordinator, Mel Tucker. Yes, I know that the Bears are going through some injuries on defense, and it causes struggles. But to give up 51 points, and I know some of them probably aren't his fault. The offense for the Patriots itself only scored 44 points because one of the touchdowns that they scored was off of a fumble.
Yep.
But just the way the Patriots were able to go down every possession, their first 5 possessions of the game, I don't know if you know this, but their first 5 possessions that their offense had, they scored.
Yeah.
Whether it was a field goal or a touchdown. That's inexcusable.
Yeah, it certainly felt like
that doesn't give the Bears offense even a chance to come out and play. So I don't think blaming any offensive player for the loss this week is acceptable. It's purely on coaching, mainly on the defensive side of the ball.
We absolutely talk about that, the Bears defense, and we talked about leaders. Tom Brady, 30 for 35, 354 yards, 5 touchdowns, no interceptions. They're not causing incompletions. He's getting time to pass in the pocket. Tom Brady looks very comfortable, very poised. Rob Gronkowski, 3 touchdowns. Shea McClellan, don't put Shea McClellan on Rob Gronkowski, Mel Tucker. It's not working out.
Not even most of the game. It was little Ryan Mundy, our safety, he's a toothpick compared to Rob Gronkowski. Gronkowski was running straight through him, and getting open. And Tom Brady is so accurate that you cannot leave a matchup that one-sided. It's pathetic. It is absolutely pathetic how poor our defensive coaching is this season.
Yeah, and that's a big disappointment this year. Just overall, as defensively, we still haven't recovered. We still haven't figured it out. Is there anything about this game that surprised you? Offensively, defensively, special teams?
No.
Yeah, this game.
I don't think so.
It kind of played out how I expected. I didn't expect so much of a blowout. I thought that the defense, as you said, five possessions in a row to start the game to score is not giving your offense a good opportunity to win. I know, but I'm still surprised at just how New England was able to dominate, and very disappointed in the Bears. They outgained them by 100 yards.
Yeah, and if anything really surprised me, it was how dominant Tom Brady looked, which is great for the Patriots, and it's going to create a very interesting battle this next week when the Patriots take on the Broncos. I think the AFC is now. I think it's going to be a toss-up between the Patriots and the Broncos. Both teams look very good. Just to go off of that,
yeah.
I think that was probably a surprise, pleasant for the Patriots fans. A surprise for me. Matt Forte continues to just impress me every week. I don't know if that's really a surprise, but the fact that he had over 100 yards rushing, 6 yards a carry, and he only had 19 carries. By the way, he should have had more. But I understand the fact that he didn't because we were down by so many, and then he had the 50 yards receiving. That's over 160 yards total. He has been doing this for the past 3 weeks in a row against the Falcons, the Dolphins, and now the Patriots. And he's probably been our lone real shining bright spot this whole season.
Yeah, and I would say surprising because running backs in the NFL don't have a very long shelf life. But Forte has been able to still produce, and he gets utilized more than just about any running back in the league with how he's used in the pass game and rushing game, and he's still able to produce. I think he's been absolutely phenomenal, in just his entire career, and it's great that he can still produce. I just hope that the Bears can put a team around Forte and some of these other great players so that we don't waste some of their better years. As we said there, Patriots, they improve. They go to 5-2. Bears, they go to 3-5, and they're going to be on the bye week. Going into the bye week, what do you think the Bears need to work on coming out of that New England matchup?
Interesting statistic again that I have for you, Mr. Cowgill. Teams that win the turnover battle in a Chicago Bears game are 8-0. So it comes down to who wins the turnover battle. Are the Bears going to be able to win the turnover battle in the next coming games that we have? After this bye week, we play the Green Bay Packers. Do you really think that we're going to win the turnover battle in that game at Lambeau Field? Absolutely not.
We didn't win it at home.
Exactly. We haven't won anything at home. I have no reason to believe that this team is going to win more than 6 or 7 games this year. So what the Bears need to work on heading into the bye, I think the season might be a lost cause. I think that we have to find who exactly is our leader if we have one. Leadership is a huge issue in our locker room. And just for future seasons for the Chicago Bears, we have to be able to know who our leader is. Another thing that we need to work on, protecting the football. Turnovers, like I said, and protecting Jay Cutler. Our offensive line has not played very well. It's evident to me. And we need to give the ball to Matt Forte more as well. Those are 2 things on offense and then just the leadership aspect of football and in the locker room. Would you have anything to share or anything to add to that?
I think that turnovers are great to reduce those, obviously. I think we need to put more pressure on the quarterback as well, so that way we can create turnovers, so we can add to our net total. And we'll see how that works out. And let's kind of shift here. So let's look at how the division is shaking up for this week. And through the first half of the season, Detroit is on top of the division at 6-2. They've looked shaky at times. They've looked like they were going to drop some games against subpar teams, but they've found ways to win those games, like against the Falcons, where they came back down 21-0 at halftime. They would win at 22-0. So they're 6-2 on the year. Green Bay, they're gaining a little bit of momentum. They lost last week against New Orleans, but they're 5-3. And Chicago and Minnesota are tied for last. Chicago is as good as Minnesota. That's just depressing to me.
That's probably the biggest surprise. If you want to talk about surprises and disappointments, that's probably the biggest surprise and disappointment of the season.
Well, in Minnesota, without Adrian Peterson, is as good as Chicago is with all these weapons that we have. That we're, offensively, we're supposed to be this juggernaut. I just don't see it from the Bears.
Sure, and but football, it's not just about talent. It's also about leadership. It's about the mentality of the game. It's about being strong-willed. It's about coaching. There's so many aspects into winning a football game and to being a winning team and a winning franchise. And right now, the Bears are in shambles. We have a lot of talent, but that talent does not know how to work together. That talent has no leadership, and that talent is just not getting it done. You look at Minnesota, they got it done against, I know it's Tampa Bay, but they got it done.
Yeah.
They're winning games.
Yeah.
You win games you're supposed to win in the NFL. Sure, they're 3-5. They're not going to make the playoffs. But just because they don't have as much talent doesn't mean they can't win games. Just look at the 06 Bears. Their offense was awful. But the leadership that we had on defense carried us through to the Super Bowl. I mean, we didn't win the Super Bowl, but we made it.
And that's Grossman.
And that's a thing that only two teams can say in a season is we made it to the Super Bowl. And we had Rex Grossman. You're absolutely right.
And one team in the history of the NFL can say they did it with Rex Grossman.
That's exactly right. But that just goes to show you, talent doesn't always win games.
Rex Grossman does. Rex Grossman has won some games. All right, let's kind of move away from this Rex Grossman talk here.
You started it.
As much as I love Rex Grossman, go Gators and all that, let's take a look at how the Bears are shaping up overall, how they stack against other teams. Offensively, they're 20th in the league in points scored, and that's definitely not where we thought they'd be. Passing wise, they're about the middle of the pack at 353 yards a game. Passing wise, they're actually near the top 10 of the league at 251, but they're middle of the pack in total yardage. And rushing wise, they're getting about over 100 yards a game, so they're 18th in the league in that regard. If they commit more to the running game, I could see that definitely being higher.
But it just makes me shake my head that we're 18th in rushing when our running back is averaging over 4 yards a carry. Obviously, we're not giving him the ball enough, and with our offense only being, did you say 20th in scoring?
Yeah, 20th.
That is absolutely pathetic.
Yeah, in an offense that we thought would be much revitalized. We thought it would improve upon last year, but it hasn't done that.
Last year, it was our offense that won us football games.
Yeah.
This year, nothing is winning us football games.
And so then, switching over to the defensive side, it's not much better. We can't really rely on this defense. They're giving up 27.8 points a game. That's almost 28. That's 29th in the NFL. There's 3 teams that are worse than the Bears in terms of giving up points defensively.
That's just points per game. The Bears have given up the 3rd most points in the NFL, only trailing Tampa Bay and, was it Minnesota?
That sounds right. Yeah. Yep, you're right. But
okay.
So that's an interesting statistic that they've been giving up that many points. In terms of passing yardage, they're 24th in the league, so they're definitely teams aren't even bothering to rush it. They're just throwing it at will. And then just individually on the year, let's take a look. Jay Cutler, he hasn't had a bad year if you look at his overall statistics. 17 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, over 2,000 yards passing. Forte on the year, he's having another great year. Over 550 yards rushing. He's got 3 rushing touchdowns, and he's also the third receiver in terms of yardage, and he's also had 3. So he's got 6 total touchdowns. He has 3 receiving, 3 rushing. And I think the most interesting thing about our receivers is Brandon Marshall is 4th on the list in terms of receptions and yardage. Part of that is due to injury, obviously. He was injured during a little bit of the year. But, Jeffrey leading the way with 563 receiving yards. Martellus Bennett, 517 receiving yards. Brandon Marshall all the way down, 384 receiving yards.
I think you could that could be a testament to the defense. Opposing the cornerbacks, opposing Brandon Marshall, they're shutting him down. It was quite obvious that Darrelle Revis was frustrating Brandon Marshall this last week. And, I mean, that's all you can really put that to. Sure, he wasn't healthy, but he played, and I know he wasn't at top speed and top shape. But to me, it hasn't been that surprising. Brandon Marshall hasn't really been at the peak of his game. Alshon Jeffrey, really, he's had his big games, and then he's had his flops. I mean, I know he had a touchdown this last game, but it was – and I mean, I don't remember seeing a lot of Alshon Jeffrey on the field this last week besides him scoring a touchdown.
He dropped that 3rd and 10 ball kind of at the end of the game. He just kind of seemed like he wasn't into it at all at the end.
I don't think any of them seemed like they were into it.
Yeah, that's a fair point. And then defensively, Jared Allen's been so far a bust for the contract that we've given him. He's got 1.5 sacks so far. What is your evaluation on Jared Allen as a Bear?
He has absolutely been a bust, and it's even more frustrating to see Julius Peppers go and thrive in the defensive scheme that Green Bay has when he struggled so badly with the Bears. So is it the Bears' defensive scheme? Is it their coaching? Is it Jared Allen? Is it a combination of the three? Because right now it just doesn't seem like Jared Allen looks like he is Jared Allen, I guess. I mean, he's not putting pressure on the quarterback. Or is it because of our defensive scheme? I mean, it's tough. It's tough to see. We don't really know. We don't have an inside look into things and how things are done with our defense.
Yeah.
So it could be a number of things. It could be a combination of things. But obviously, Jared Allen's not looking like Jared Allen.
And while Jared Allen has underperformed, Willie Young has exceeded all expectations. 7 sacks on the year. That's 5th most, tied for 5th most in the NFL. He's been a great pass rusher so far.
He's looking like a very good contender for a Pro Bowl spot this year.
That'd be great.
And he absolutely deserves it if he continues to play the way he is. He has been a huge bright spot for the Chicago Bears, and he's just been an absolute spark plug on defense at times. And it's very good to see. It's nice to see somebody contributing on the Bears defense.
Yeah. So, and we talked about turnovers. So the Bears' turnover ratio, they're -3 right now. That's 26 in the NFL, and they have the 5th most giveaways in the NFL as well. So that's really hurting them. That's kind of been our big sore spot, winning that turnover battle. As you said, 8-0, if the Bears can win that battle. Let's kind of go through the rest of the schedule. The Bears are on a bye week, so let's go through and let's just kind of quickly predict some of these games here. Just kind of give me if you think they're going to win or lose. So they're going to play Green Bay. They're going to be at Lambeau Field for Week 10. How do you see that one going?
Is that even a question?
Yeah.
They're going to lose.
Okay. What about Tampa Bay?
Win.
All right. Detroit? At Ford Field.
Loss.
All right. And against the Cowboys at home? It's a tough one.
If Tony Romo's not healthy, I think the Bears win.
Okay. I'll put you down. New Orleans?
Loss.
And then the Lions at home?
Still a loss.
And then at Minnesota?
Win.
So you think they're going to sweep Minnesota this year?
Yeah, they should.
So we're looking at about 3 wins, 3 to 4 wins, depending on how that Dallas game goes, against 1, 2. So about 3-3 maybe. Where do you see the Bears ending up in terms of total record wise?
I mean, I don't see the Bears winning more than 7 games this year. If they can make it to 8-8, that's fantastic. But I don't see them going 5-3 in the second stretch of the season. I don't see us beating New Orleans, even Dallas. I mean, they're playing well this year. I know they lost last night to Washington. Doesn't matter to me. They're still a very good team. Not going to beat Green Bay at Lambeau. Yeah, even with Detroit at home or away, the way that they're playing right now, the resilience that they have, they just keep getting wins. I don't see us winning that game. I mean, I see us beating Tampa Bay. I see us beating Minnesota. I know Minnesota is 3-5 like Chicago, but I mean, when it comes to talent, you expect Chicago to beat Minnesota, but you could easily see Minnesota winning one of those games as well. It's hard to predict, but I don't see the Bears' future looking so bright.
Yeah. All right, before we sign off here, Bears in the playoffs. Do you think it's going to? Do you think where are you at on that? Do you think the Bears can make the playoffs this year? Can they salvage the season?
No, there's too many good teams in the NFC. Just look at I guess just look at each division. I mean, the NFC South is bad. They're not going to get a wild card spot. But you have the NFC North, who's got Detroit and Green Bay at 6-1 and. Is it 6-2? 6-2. 6-2 and 5-3. And then you look at the NFC West. You have the Cardinals, who look very good. You have San Francisco and Seattle, who are going to be fighting for that other wild card spot. The Bears have no chance unless they go on a big winning streak. They would have to finish at least 9-7, or probably even.
Oh, they'd have to be better than 9-7.
9-7 or 10-6.
They'd have to win at least 10 games, I'd imagine. And I agree. I don't think they're going to be able to turn it around. I think they'll miss the playoffs again. And I'll see. It'll be interesting to see how they handle the offseason if they don't make the playoffs for another year with Trestman. We'll see how Emery approaches that.
There will be changes made, I'm sure. Maybe not so much as to players. Well, there will be changes made with players, but I think it'll be more staff, especially on the defensive side of the ball. And if there's, I think that Phil Emery is so behind Mark Trestman right now that I know a lot of Bears fans don't like Trestman at this point in time. I listen to David Kaplan on CSN Chicago all the time, and he questions Mark Trestman a lot, but I don't expect the Bears to make a head coaching change at all after the season. I think that he's at least locked for another year.
All right. So there you heard it from us both. Vote of no confidence in terms of the Bears' playoff chances. I want to thank you guys for listening to the Bearscast with myself, Ethan Cowgill, and Andrew McCulloch here. We're going to be signing off here from North Campus here at the studio in the basement. And as always, bear down.